Order. Yes, let's go live. Live with the vocals. Okay then, so we can launch into this. Do we just say Chair's opening remarks? Just one remark here, really, or two remarks. One is just basically at the very end of the meeting, we do have the ability to raise items just for information for the next meeting. So if there's anything that people do want to include in these meetings, please raise them then. So Chloe can take them down and we can include them in the following meeting's agenda. So that we don't actually have an not an AONB, that's something else. But you know what I mean. Okay. The other comment is I raised the matter with Town Clerk and the Mayor with regard to the Bulwark, to again in turn raise it with DDC, but the awful state of the wall, because it's our sole surviving stone and brick wall, and it is degrading. It is falling apart because of the trees growing in it. And all it needs is the trees removing, at least to stop it degrading further. But anyway, that I would like to raise as an agenda item for the next meeting.
Can I just say on that point, I've got an exercise underway with DDC around the town trail. And whilst it's street furniture focused, I can make sure that the person I'm going to be walking around with very soon, or meeting with at least, I'll feedback in there as well.
That would be excellent. Yeah. Yes, but the Mayor's asked me to chase DDC on this matter. Right, apologies for absence received. We have an apology from Councillor Hunter. Oh yes. It's gone. I don't see Ben here, but I'm sure he will turn up during the meeting. Declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of business to be transacted on the agenda. We don't have anything there. Minutes of the Heritage and Townscape Committee. To receive the minutes of the Heritage and Townscape Committee held on Wednesday the 13th of November 2024, and to consider any matters arising from those minutes not covered elsewhere in this agenda. And we need a decision. As Councillor Ungerson.
Here we go. Yes, 1124.5, which is a review of the action and project log. It's minuted that I was to write to Councillor Sue Chandler to discuss and explore the legalities and costs of the project. This is to get a ramp from the key part through Ainslie Court. Well, I don't actually remember agreeing that, but I've sort of calmed down. I still feel rather frustrated about it all. If you want to minute it, it's not as I remember it, but I'll write to Councillor Chandler tomorrow or the day after. I don't remember saying that.
So basically, Claire has raised the note here about writing to Councillor Chandler.
I do believe that did come at the end of a very long debate about all of the matters to do with this, and I believe that we both came away with an action each.
Well, I didn't make a note of it. Anyway, if you wish to record it, okay, I'll do it tomorrow or the day after. I'll write to her first. And let's see whether I get a response.
And
sorry, you may not want me to raise this, but the elephant was in the previous minutes and I don't have an update. If you want me to leave it till the next meeting, I can.
Can we have an update?
Yes.
I don't see why not.
Okay, I met with the DDC Parks and Open Spaces manager and Jane Miles on Friday, and they wanted to know specifically where an elephant would go, should we put one up. But actually that led to a much longer conversation about liability, about where it would be placed, because STC would have to either rent or buy the piece of land because it's DDC land. We would have to have a concrete plinth, and it would have to be rectangular because you can't expect the people who cut the grass to cut round elephants' legs, so it would have to be cut round the rectangle. We would have to have public liability insurance. We'd also have to look at insurance to keep it spick and span, and we'd also need planning permission, and that's just beginning. So we were, both John Vanderdoll and I were a little disillusioned. I don't think they meant to be. I think what she was pointing out was all the issues, and we still really can't agree on what it is that the material is that it's made of. However, it doesn't mean that DDC are not willing to fund it, but it's still there in terms of the elephant itself. It's all the other things that are going to take quite a lot of investigation.
So my question would be, why has it shifted from what I thought was going to be a DDC-owned initiative through engagement, rather than, we never concluded in this meeting that it was an STC-driven initiative?
Well,
so
it was, in a way, Councillor Super, it came from the tourist forum.
yeah.
And the tourist forum, I mean, it was a round table, I think, suggestion, put it that way.
Yeah.
And so I think we did say, well, if they were paying for it, surely the rest of it would be up to them. But I don't think that's the case. So I think we need to do, I will with John do some more digging, some more finding out what these real costs are about. I did make a bit of an error, because when she asked how big it was, I said it was 7.5 metres, which actually frightened the life out of it. I meant 7.5 feet. But anyway, so I just thought I'd tell you it's not gone away, but I'll keep an eye on it.
Yes, it's just it would have to come back to
Yeah.
STC with a business.
Yeah, business plans.
African or Indian?
Sorry?
Yeah, elephant. African or Indian? That will be the next question.
Mammoth.
And any other comments with regard to the minutes? Can we have somebody to propose and somebody to second the minutes?
I'll second it.
And a show of hands.
I'm abstaining.
Abstaining.
No, I'm abstaining.
Abstaining. That's 2 abstentions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 and 3. Is that right? So, review of the action and project log. Members to consider the Heritage Townscape action and project log. This is the ongoing log that we have been maintaining. And going from the top, status action. Councillor Esmanet to look at potential practical actions that STC can take forward from the report provided from the SECG report back to the committee. I believe that is ongoing. But
I've got to vacate for 5 minutes.
yeah, thank you. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly again because it's basically an aid memoir. Town clerk to contact the contractor and ask for investigation solutions to make the wording on the bottom black clearer. This is with regard to the war memorial. Do we have any change that says details? Yes, please. Yes, please.
So this is in regards to the war memorial, that the contact details have been received for a possible builder to
Do the work.
to do the work to make the writing stand out. So I've contacted her, and she's actually already been and she sent us a quote. So it was for £185, which was somewhat cheaper than the first quote. So I will be making a report and taking it to the Finance Committee for approval.
That sounds very
Sorry,
positive.
how much was that again?
185.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's very positive. actions be shared with DDC officer by the town clerk and to seek a compromise if funds permit. This is with regard to the bus shelter. Bus shelter needs to be at least partially enclosed. And we've got a comment here.
So this is part of an ongoing, but just to make you aware that the town clerk is in contact with DDC, and she has contacted them again in January and is awaiting a response.
Yes, thank you.
So just on that point, the project came to the period of post-project review was till November, so we're now moving into February, and we still haven't concluded any discussions around any money that might be forthcoming, so it's a bit slow.
I know.
Well, the bus shelter's not finished in the first place. It's supposed to be etchings on it and stuff, so it's just a bog standard. So they're nowhere finished. The project hasn't finished yet. They still need to complete the etchings on them.
Where it ended up at the end of, in the middle of last year, but was pushed back to November, was that there are a number of things that we say still are outstanding, and what DDC's response was, you'll get the money back that's left at the end, whatever that might be, and if you want to pay for etchings or whatever it is, you can take it out of the remaining money, with no clear clarity on whether we are going to get any money and how much it might be.
Correct, and again, this is why the town clerk has emailed to try and find these answers, but as yet there's been no response. But I will raise your concerns again with the town clerk to push forward.
Thank you. And town clerk to contact DDC to establish whether there is progress on the priorities identified in the 2 consultancy reports produced. This is Visions for Sandwich and Heritage Harbour and Key Development. And there is a comment in green here.
Yes, so we did contact them, and at the time they didn't have capacity, and that still continues, and they have advised that they will be in contact when they have capacity to move these forward.
Right, thank you. Any other? So, town clerk to write to Kent County Council to clarify the legal status of the right of way and to write to Ainsley Court Residence Company. This has been ongoing, obviously. There's a point here.
And the last that I believe we left it was that there were 2 actions, one from myself, which was to see whether the work regarding any sort of ramp would be taken on by officers, and I confirmed that at this time there isn't capacity.
Right.
Can I make a comment? I find that very disappointing, and you know, well, it's very disappointing. And I followed up when you wrote to me to say that there would be no resources from the staff to help with this. I followed that up saying that there is £2,500 in this year's financial year budget, and that there's another project which has been suggested, which would be a balustrade down the slope of Fellowship Walk, because I know that is very steep. I've been on it on a mobility scooter, and it's really rather frightening. And obviously, people on mobility scooters couldn't use the balustrade, but people with mobility issues walking would like to have a balustrade there. And I said, what would be the support? Would there be any staff support to spend that money, £2,500, which is in the budget for this financial year, and obviously comes to an end on April the 7th, or whenever this financial year comes to an end, that could be used to pay for such an improvement to Sandwich's Townscape. And again, I was told that there would be no staff resources available. And I have to say, I do find that very frustrating, and I would like that reported.
That's fine, happy to report that.
As we're on this subject, in terms of putting the balustrade in, I'm presuming that the land is owned by DDC or STC, so we don't have the same restrictions that we would have with Ainsley Court.
I believe the whole new idea would need to come back round to the location committee for approval, as you you would be changing what you have specified that money to be
No,
used for.
the money is for disability access.
Not specifically for the ramp.
No, it's never been set to be specifically for the ramp. If you look at the budget, it just says disability access.
Okay. In which case, I still think a decision would need to be made by the Heritage and Town Committee as a whole as to whether they will be
Well,
happy
the
to
money
carry
will
that
be
forward.
gone by then, by the time we have our next meeting.
I believe from memory that the mayor said that this money was still available for the next financial year, but I can check that.
Yes, it is, it's in the budget, but it's just that, you know, there's a budget this year and there's a budget for next year. So, you know, if we don't spend the money this year, it's not a carryover to next year, as I understand it, it's a new tranche of money.
Totally right. My comment would be that if we're looking at an initiative, which this would be a different initiative, whether it's new or not is not the point, but it should really start from the other end, because you just mentioned, Simon, about well, there shouldn't be any problems. It should be investigated in terms of ownership, what access we need in terms of any regulations at all. And if they're all dismissed, then it's a straightforward, clear path. But at the moment, that investigation I don't think has been done, so that will be needed first to then make a commitment to do it, I would suggest. I don't know which part of Fellowship, I mean I can visualise it to a point, but there is a land dispute already on Fellowship Walk on the edge, in any case, regards the private owner of that plot of land that's got the fencing around it, and a land grab by that landowner, allegedly. So there is already some issues there around ownership of the land in any case.
Can we have this as an agenda item for the next meeting, and we can start to, because I think the Ainsley Court one is just going, I think we've discussed it.
Well, you've raised it every month for 3 years.
I think it should, I'm right to
This is something else, but at least
It's such an obvious thing to do.
some of the barriers associated with Ainsley Court are not there for Fellowship Walk. So if we can have that.
Will you be providing a report to come to the next committee?
Would you?
Well, I could do if you want me to. What do you want me to say? That we need a balustrade there? Yes, okay.
I think it was similar in line with the form that you all use for all the other projects.
I think we need to understand who owns the land. Somebody needs to check on that.
But that's something that I can't do, and I'm really unwilling to do.
I'm happy to check if the land is
Yeah.
owned, but you need to just clarify for me exactly where it is.
Okay.
So then, I'll email.
Right, going on from there, request Compass Roads project is be placed on full council agenda with a view to seeking part or all of the funding for the project. This has been moving forward quite well, and certainly if you pass by Carrie Hallward's stonemasonry shop, it is in there being worked on.
Yeah.
I don't know if I think we shouldn't interfere too much, but it is, quite interesting. But there are further comments.
No, just to say that yes, the project is ongoing and in full steam ahead.
Brilliant. And
Carrie did put an update on Facebook about progress on it, to garnish interest really, and
Yes.
share the details, which was quite nice.
And when you actually see it in reality, you think, actually, that's going to be really good.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So, invite representatives from Network Rail, Kent Resilience Forum and KCC to Heritage Townscape pre-meeting on
May 2024.
Yes, yes, this is, and there are comments.
I imagine I am now on a blacklist for Network Rail. I have emailed numerous times. I do have a contact who is very helpful, but they are having staffing issues and they are unable at this time to find an appropriate person to send to talk to us. But I am still pursuing it.
Right, can I make a suggestion? If you talk to me about outside this meeting about who your contact is, I'll try and use my contact with the Community Rail Partnership and see if I can get something. Sorry, this doesn't wash. because the railways operate on the basis that there's always somebody who is responsible for critical safety issues. That's talking a bit of bullet, to put it very politely.
I don't necessarily think that I will speak to you outside of it and I will share who and what department I'm dealing with. Maybe I'm in the wrong area, but this gentleman who
And
works
there is a levels crossing manager in this area, because he turned up at the meeting about a year ago. So I think you're not being communicated with, shall we say.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is a health and safety issue, and surely they must respond to an issue like this, especially if you look at what's been going on in the last few days, where we've had road closures and people are moving around and jumping over all sorts of sort of areas of the roads. I just don't understand why they can't almost be summoned, if you like, to come and talk to the council about a health and safety issue, because it must be against the law not to respond to a health and safety.
I think the Regulation of Railways Act is rather different from most acts, and I don't think this would. The health and safety issue, as far as they're concerned, is are the barriers working safely, yes or no, and they are. There's no question about that. The issue that we had was that because the power went and they did not have any manual cranking arrangements, that's not technically, from a railway viewpoint, a health and safety issue. I agree it's a very, very, very silly system, and we're snookered because we've got 4 level crossings, and there's only one road left that hasn't got a level crossing. But I think, and I don't think any local authority has any powers over the railway authority. So I understand the sympathies, but I think probably it doesn't work quite like that. But that's the thing. But I'll try to chase it up. Clodagh and I can talk. We'll see what we can do, because it is getting daft. But the other thing we need to remember is that the people that were a bit lax in communicating with the police, because there's as much a police control system as a railway system. The railway system, the barriers failed, they had no method of hand cranking. But the police were supposed to alert more people and diversions and everything else. And we didn't see a lot of that, but it may have been just a time scale. We don't know the details. So we have to liaise with the police, and Claire and I talked about that before the meeting.
Thank you.
Right. ATC, should that be STC?
ATC, Assistant Town Clerk.
Oh, ATC, sorry, ATC.
The training call.
Post item on the September committee agenda to review the tree warden's report in relation to the climate emergency.
I believe that's ongoing from the last meeting.
That's on, that remains ongoing. Councillor Chuka and Councillor Morehouse to explore a mowing regime for Sandwich. I don't know if there's any.
No further updates on that.
So it is winter, so
Yes.
expect it. STC via the H&T committee wish to explore the possibility of organising, sponsoring, operating some form of community transport for constituents without easy access to other transport.
I've not had the capacity to look at that. I'll try to pick it up from late February onwards, but there've been a number of other commitments.
Thank you very much. And then to review the availability of bicycle parking in the town via a site survey and research. This is bike racks. We don't, we've got Councillor Paul Carter next to that. Councillor Carter's not here, so we can move on. Street furniture. This project involves undertaking audit of street furniture. I will not read everything here. So over 106 items have been surveyed, and a request will be made for monies to be allocated in the budget for repairs and maintenance.
So the two things are to update are that as we approved the STC budget on Monday, there is an amount in there for the project, so that's good. And separately, the town clerk is liaising with DDC to set up a relevant people to take it forward, and maybe even secure some additional help in some shape or form in terms of materials or otherwise. So it's moving on but slowly. Hopefully I'll have a proper update next time.
Thank you.
I've got 2 months.
Yeah, we do.
Surely I'll get something done that time.
Even make sure.
Slowways National Walking Network, promoting surveys and reviews of local walking routes in order to create a national walking network. Councillor Anderson,
Yes,
anything to
well,
add there?
this is something that sits at the back of my to-do list.
That's
for
we have
months.
many.
And I've had some health problems, so I haven't been walking with the group that I normally walk with recently. So, I mean, in a way, presumably the committee would have to vote for this. I quite like, it's a long time since this got put on, and it was some project that arose when I was chair of this committee. And I can't actually even remember what it's about. But if the committee agrees, perhaps it could come off.
Yes, if you would prefer to see it come off, shall we remove that from the... Yeah. Because it's going to happen, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, and I don't think we're going to be able to influence it that much. So, parking and speeding, review of the parking within Sandwich Ward and what improvements can be made. That was discussed anyway in the STC extraordinary meeting. There's a parking survey ongoing at the moment. So it's got to be assigned, so if we can just put this off until next meeting.
I would also say that potentially some of this will feature in the HIP. In any case, well, if issues are still significant, then they certainly will surface.
Yeah, thank you. So, we have review of the action. Public participation. A 20-minute session to be set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect to business on the agenda. Do we have anybody who's going to be proposing to speak as a member of the public here?
No.
So no, I'll not read the rest. Disability Access Strategy, update and sharing of report by Councillor Breen on options for improving access for pedestrians and cyclists across the Stour and Sandwich. Councillor Breen, can I sort of launch straight into you, or do you want me to introduce you?
I'm reasonably well known by most people around the place.
So, you have to introduce yourself to the owl.
Yeah. Oh yes, no, this is Councillor Breen, who's been invited to attend, having written a report, because this is his particular speciality, on the means of crossing the Stour in a safe manner. I think that's a fair, by a broad cohort of population. Councillor Breen, over to you if you'd like to introduce your particular report that you...
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. Just by way of background, I was approached by Councillor Ungerson, I think probably in about September last, to think about the cost of a pedestrian bridge over the river, because that was the agenda item that was discussed previously. And I was approached because I've had some experience many years ago now as a construction manager building, I think, 19 bridges. So I've had a bit of experience in this, but when I looked into it, I thought we need to kind of widen the scope to include how users would use the bridge as opposed to the existing bridge, as opposed to just a new bridge. So what I did was I looked at it and I tried to document the issues there. Primary issue really is that the pavements on either side are only about 700 wide. A wheelchair is 800 wide. The recommendation for a a footpath for disabled people is 1 point, or people with mobility issues is 1.2, and the width of a standard footpath to allow 2 people to pass is normally 1.5, and that's what I could find from the kind of the codes and regulations. But there are lots of different codes and regulations. It depends who you want to listen to as to how wide the bridge should be. And similarly, the road is only the kind of the central carriageway of the bridge is only 3 metres wide, and nowadays the central carriageway or such a single track road tends to be about 3.5 or 3.7 metres. So there is as a consequence of this, we've had an incident where a pedestrian was actually knocked into the river in September of this year. You'll have all seen damage to the parapet wall just as you're heading towards Ramsgate. I haven't bothered including a photograph, but that was repaired not so long ago. But I have included a photograph of the bus which mounts the footpath there and has cracked up all of the York stone paving. But I think as a starting block, this is just a paper for discussion. And we really need to kind of gather some facts to do a pedestrian and a traffic survey. But that again brings in questions: when are you going to do it? Are you going to do it in the summer months? Are you going to do it in the winter months? When are you actually going to get a properly representative time? And because the guidelines are kind of confusing, and this bridge emanates from over 100 years ago, does the bridge actually comply with current legislation and the current guidelines? I don't believe it does. So the existing bridge was built, I think there's been a bridge there for many hundreds of years, but the existing one, I believe, was built in 1875, though I'm sure others could correct me. It's got a span of about 36 metres and a clear passageway for boats. And I've shown it's got pedestrian and traffic sensors, so that if there is a car tailgating or amber gambling, the traffic light at the other end is not turned green until that vehicle is cleared. So I thought of what are the options, and I've identified 6 options, and I'll go through each of these in a bit more detail. Do nothing, make minor mods, or a single pavement. Do nothing, leave the bridge as it is, only do maintenance repairs, and you can see the actual wearing course on the metal section of the road is already significantly worn, and kind of repairs are kind of needed. But that's obviously kind of the cheapest option because there's no capital cost, and in many respects the bridge has been there for a long time, and I think people or drivers tend to be respectful if there are people with mobility issues crossing. So, do we really need to do anything? Option 2 is to do minor repairs. I've shown there that the heights of the parapet wall are as low as 750 mil. Now, normally the minimum height for a handrail is 3 foot or 915 mil, normally going up to about 1050 mil. So the parapet is not, at the stone sections, is not really kind of compliant. Then I've identified an option of, well, what about if they did away with the pavement on one side and widened the pavement on the other side? That would give you a pavement of kind of 1.4 metres, and I've tried to show in the bottom picture there the kind of detail of the steel upstand that comes off the steel deck and is curved, that forms the edge of the pavement. So with a disc cutter, that could be cut off on one side and welded on the other side. We could pedestrianise the bridge altogether. stop traffic, but of course there would be objections, to that. We could put in a new pedestrian bridge, but this is a major project, and the more I looked at it, the more expensive I thought it would be because of the difficulties of establishing kind of pier foundations in a tidal river. The construction logistics, the areas that they would take up, the bank on the other side, on the Ramsgate side, would need to be stabilised in order to hold the heavy equipment, to put in the foundations even. And the investment required to actually develop this project to a sanction grade investment decision, I put £1 million down, and obviously the project might not get the green light to go ahead, and £1 million is not to be sneezed at because of the need to do soil surveys below the actual river. So then I put an estimate for the bridge there, and I've tried to show where the bridge would align. There are services in the bridge, the services on the side, the steps going down to where the river ferry runs type of thing. And there would be a major impact for quite a period of time. The bridge would need to be closed. The movement by boats would be restricted. The loss of car parking and so forth would also need to be taken into account. I've included kind of the data or the major project life scale steps. Sorry, may I just go back, because when I talked about what modifications we could do to the bridge, I talked about increasing the parapet height, but I didn't talk about it could be possible to develop a zebra crossing style delay system to allow pedestrians to cross the bridge safely by altering the sequencing on the existing traffic lights. That would need careful consideration because the traffic light sensors already pick up when pedestrians are around. And then really I've kind of said, you could think about a new bridge altogether, or widening the bridge, and again that's a huge project. So what I'm suggested for discussions in the way going forward was, we've got the highway improvement plan running at the moment. We could, or this committee, if this committee so wants, it could submit a request for kind of the zebra crossing point of view, or they could talk about the new footway, the widened footway. I think there's a need to hold discussions with residents, and I think there's a need to engage with stakeholders. But above all, we need to be clear as to who would lead this project, because at the end of the day, we're a parish council with a £600,000 a year turnover, and the potential cost here is huge. It's really something for KCC. They are responsible for the roads. They obviously need to have a plan as to what the life of the existing bridge is and what the plan is for the future, given that there is intent to build some 500 houses or more on Discovery Park. So that's the report in a quick summary, and it was really done as a basis for discussion by this. I'm not putting forward any recommendations, it's really just kind of some thoughts from me.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Anderson?
Yes, I think we should all be very grateful to Councillor Green, whom I approached not as a councillor but as an engineer whom I happen to know, obviously through working together within the council. And I think we should all be very grateful for the way in which you've comprehensively looked at the options us ballpark costings. I should add that I understand that I've only been told this informally, that shortly before Christmas, Sir Roger Gale, whom I approached about this with Ben Garrett at Age Concern, early on, I don't think it was September, I think it was more like October or November. No, end of August. Absolutely, he'd just come back from holiday. Anyway, Roger Gale came to a meeting with Ben Garrett and myself at Age Concern, and Ben and I talked to him about the problems with the existing bridge. Roger Gale then wrote to me, I think I shared the letter with this committee, saying he wanted to know who owned it, because we were talking about a new pedestrian bridge, who owned the land on both sides, when I was able to discover that, because Nick Gray apparently knows exactly who owns the land through his work as a Port Haven commissioner. And a ballpark figure for a new pedestrian bridge. So that's when I approached Peter to try and get that. But meantime, I understand that Sir Roger has approached KCC. I was told this by the chair of the town team at a drinks party, you know, the kind of thing that happens before Christmas. And he said that, as he understood it, a letter had gone to KCC, I don't know who it was addressed to, from Sir Roger Gale, and that he had not had a very positive reply back, and that he would be writing again. Now, I was delighted to hear this, surprised. I had hoped that maybe I would be in the loop, but clearly not. But delighted that he had decided, because that's what I had hoped would emerge from this meeting with him, that he had decided to take the lead on this. And obviously the local MP has, I think, as much, if not much more, clout with KCC than we do, particularly because the majority party to which he belongs is also, you know, running KCC. I think it all helps. And I don't know how far that's got. I mean, Ben Garrett may know more, but he's not here to tell us. So what I would suggest is, I think, and I did send Peter's paper to Sir Roger, but I haven't had a reply from him. But I think that it would be helpful to meet with him, find out what he's doing, where he's got to. As I understand it, he's running a surgery at Age Concern, so on a regular monthly basis, so we could perhaps combine it with that. And just share our thoughts. I think my thought is that a new pedestrian bridge is now out of the question. I mean, the costs are huge, and that the options possibly boil down to either reconfiguring the pavements, which you're saying would cost possibly about £100,000, and or making some adjustment to the traffic light system, which would appear to cost less. Those are the two options that I think are the most obvious, but other people may have other views. And that we as a committee and a council should write to Sir Roger and say, we've heard you've been involved, would you like to share with us what you've been doing and what cases has responded?
And Councillor Black.
I think Councillor Sue was first.
Then Councillor Black, then Keith, then Claire, or Claire? Carol. Sorry. Sorry.
Senior moment.
Yes.
And
And then.
And me.
And yes, so. Councillor Chu.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, as an exercise, I think it's a brilliant piece of work that Peter has done on a slim set of facts, because what's been produced is great. But what it does to me, it just demonstrates that actually this is quite a complex problem. A parish council cannot deliver any of these solutions. Engagement through the HIP is a potential, but you wouldn't necessarily, so two things. The HIP process is separate, and we need to keep that protected as a separate entity in terms of what it's about, because actually it should be resident driven. We have something that can drop into that process and the evaluation, but what we shouldn't do is fast track something just because it's been discussed in a council meeting, in my view. So it will go into the HIP process and it'll be evaluated, and if it comes out as a priority, then something will be triggered. But even triggering something, the end game is still not affordable for a parish council, is what I would say at the moment, and that makes it quite difficult to progress within the parish council. I think the stuff that's been done already is great. Engaging the Sir Roger Gill is excellent, because that's probably the right route. Ideally, there'd be a resident action group up and running that would be saying this needs to change. A couple of other things that are happening is we've got the development at Discovery Park, but that is long term, and within the obligations from 2014, there is a planning obligation that the development has to make payments, public transport improvements. So that's one of the obligations on the developers, to pay an amount of money to the council. Now the council, in this case, is the district council. Yeah, it's their obligations that have been set on the development. Now of course, the district council almost certainly won't be around anywhere near the time this development gets up and running. And so there's some trigger points and when the money's got to be paid, and that won't be a number of years away. So there's one aspect there that whoever holds the ring on that obligation should be seeking something in relation, because one of the main pressure points of the traffic flow is going to be the bridge.
Absolutely.
So back to my starting point, this is quite a complex issue. We need to be very careful. What we don't try and do is grab it and own it ourselves. I think we can be a pivot to push other people to do things and see where it goes. Because I think there's a reluctance, from what I hear in the past, from KCC to do anything in relation to the bridge, because of a number of possibly sensible factors, but I don't even know what those factors are.
Can I, Councillor Anderson first?
Yes, because I've just got one comment to make about, of course the parish council can't afford this kind of thing, but we do have the example of Guildhall Forecourt, which was a whole portfolio of sources of different funds, including Royal St George's, for example. I mean, I'm not saying that they will cough up for this, but there are, and there's section money, because the developers will have an interest in seeing, and they already pitched for Willowbank, saying, easy access into Sandwich, you can cycle, you can walk, and Sandwich is lovely and so on, but actually it's very dangerous, and a lot of people on Willowbank are absolutely stuck there, particularly the ones in the flats who have disability problems. So I do think that there are a number of constituencies that could be put together, but I think it takes somebody like Sir Roger Gale to bring it together. In the Guildhall Forecourt, it was Councillor J. Holloway, that he brought these different groups together and found the money. So I don't think it's impossible, but it is complicated.
Councillor Black?
Yeah, Peter, I wasn't quite sure this pedestrian changing the lights sequence. Is this just at one end, or is this to stop all traffic while there was a pedestrian on the bridge?
It would just be to stop all traffic going over the bridge, so there'll be a push button on either side of the bridge, which would then delay traffic. So presumably traffic could still turn from the quayside up onto High Street, and traffic could kind of flow down the quayside from Strand Street.
The bridge would be isolated from motor traffic, won't be isolated from cyclists, because they're not going to pay attention to that, until a person has walked the entire length of the bridge.
Correct. And if they stop and linger,
And take their
And
photographs.
take the photographs so that we can, that's what I thought you were saying, which I suspect is going to be an interesting concept to try to sell.
yeah, I did have a discussion with the traffic control engineer, and that was the same discussion we've just had.
Us transport people are hopeless, aren't we?
And Mr. Hebner, I think, the traffic moving.
I think there's some other factors that we could and should include in the discussion. For example, there's been a long-term problem about rat running through the town. That is taking shortcuts coming down Ramsgate Road in the direction of Deal, and then that leads to concerns about speeding. Now, if we did pedestrianise the bridge, of course, that would then put an end to that. Except I was attracted to the idea that Councillor Green floated in his report, that there should be some kind of dispensation for Willowbank residents if they wished to drive a car across the bridge into town. Although it occurs to me who would want to do that. But when you think about the approaches to the beach, where you have to display a sticker at the kiosk to prove that you've got the right to drive in. Well, similarly, you could have one for residents of Willowbank if they insisted that they wanted to drive over the bridge, if they were very careful with mostly pedestrian traffic.
Sorry, just on that, Keith, I think in option 4, I say close the bridge to all traffic except emergency vehicles, possibly issue passes to residents only. And now with automatic number plate reading, you wouldn't need to have the kind of the guard that they do have down at Sandwich Bay. And you would then, because that's what I've said, you could install signs, so cars that don't have the necessary approval could turn around at the roundabout and go back. But it would be controversial.
Yeah.
George?
Sorry, and I was going to point out that, there are houses due at Discovery Park. Do we really envisage all those cars suddenly on this 1875 built bridge? And I would say that the cars at the houses at Discovery Park, it would be as easy for them to drive out onto the ring road and back into town as it is to negotiate the footbridge or the pedestrianised bridge. So I would still support the idea of pedestrianising the bridge, and also the area around the Barbican, which would then improve our, what they call the tourist offer, in that it would be I'd call it the Barbican precinct, which is rather grand, but it would enable the pubs and restaurants to have sitting out areas.
So, okay, this is George.
Well, having been involved in the Lorry Watch survey, which, and with KCC and DDC, but KCC more prominently, I think that it's data that has to prove what way you might want to move forward. And the data in terms of collecting information about, how many people do cross the bridge that have a wheelchair or a buggy, how many cars actually come across the bridge in each direction, how many cars are coming down Strand Street and turning right to go up the High Street, and of those cars that are coming across the bridge and coming down Sound Street and going up the High Street, how many of them then turn into New Street to enter the town? Because to my mind, there are an awful lot of vehicles, if you sit down there or stand down there in Bell, that actually only use it for a wrap round.
Yeah.
Now we can do a survey. I'm sure that we could pull together enough people to do a different day every week, as we did with Lorry Watch, 7 in the morning till 7 at night, 7 days a week, over 7 weeks. So to try and get, and fix it, that it wasn't in school holidays and things like that. So we could gather some data if that was going to be helpful. The other point I think that Councillor Anderson was making was this issue of Sir Roger Gale and phasing the traffic lights. Now, I happened to, when I did the HIP survey last week, it was Councillor Chandler that interviewed me, and I raised this with her, and she said that Sir Roger Gale was actually only interested, or was only putting forward the idea of phasing the lights so that it would take slightly longer in the morning to go across the bridge and slightly longer in the evening to come back across the bridge. So there wasn't an option about phasing the lights to allow it to only have pedestrian crossing. And there were quite a few reasons about that, and that was, I mean, again, we're back to this: what's the run on it? What can people see from a camera and so on? So he is quite keen for that. And he also thinks that if we phase the lights to allow pedestrians, and I'm sorry, this is second hand. If we phase the lights for pedestrians, we would have a build-up of traffic all the way up Strand Street, which is not healthy, and likewise on the other side of the bridge going back into Discovery Park. I suppose the query there is, if you wait for 15 or 20 minutes in Strand Street every morning, are you going to be put off actually attempting to cross the bridge, or are you going to go around the bypass, which was what it was built for? The problem with the bypass, as we all know, is that there is an area where it's single file, and that's where the traffic builds up. So, you know, is it better to make, would it be better to actually look at what KCC might do to widen that part of the bridge rather than fiddle around with the stuff that we're doing in the town? I also think there would be an awful lot of objections, so consultation with not just residents but businesses as well, for closing the bridge would cause mayhem. The businesses at the moment are struggling. They don't believe that, you know, anyone is helping them to bring in that trade, which is why I'm saying we could do a count on how many cars actually turn in as though they're going into the town, but and that might help to prove or to have some data. But I think it's a massive issue, a lot of money, and it is. I mean, I do think it's dangerous. I've got grandchildren with buggies who just stop the traffic and walk in the middle of the road, and I've seen people with the trolleys that come across. They've got places on the other side of the river, the toll bridge, where they store food. And they have to walk across with the food from the big freezers over there. And again, they don't wait, they actually just walk in the middle of the road. So people have solved their own problem, but it's not ideal when we get to, will there be another major accident? And of course, if you keep pointing out all the damage and so on that's being done. So, sorry, I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not advocating one way or another, but I think we should at least understand what Sir Roger Gale is actually trying to achieve with KCC before we sort of.
Can I have either Councillors Ripley or Tom then?
It was Councillor Tom's first.
Tom's first, and then Councillor Morehouse. Then it's my turn, and then Councillor Marie.
I'm really curious as to what the outcome was in investigating into the man ended up in the river. I hadn't heard about that. And I would have thought that was a bit of a never event really, because that river is dangerous. And I was just thinking, if that had been a child, we've already had one child go into the river, and the currents are so fast. I don't know, that surely whoever would have investigated that, there would be some sort of outcome. Because that's a serious incident, and if it had been a child, it would have probably a very different outcome.
We also had a centenarian who went in the river during one of the sandwiches 2 years ago.
Yes, yeah.
The police were in attendance and they were interviewing other people, but the speed at which the police reports come out.
I know the individual, I heard it from the town clerk, because the individual had contacted and written to the town clerk, so we may want to follow up. And the individuals offered to help with any future reviews of the bridge and so forth.
Councillor Ripley.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, have you not
Quite
finished?
done.
Yeah, sorry.
I was just also, Peter, I was wondering with the bridge position, was there options for different positioning, or was that there or nowhere? Because I know that the building that's been knocked down, that's been developed, isn't it? The land
That's
we
been
can't have our own
developed.
agenda.
But it would be very, I thought if we moved the bridge west, on the other side of the existing bridge, it's not feeding into kind of the circulation area. And then if you put the bridge where it is at the moment, well, the pedestrians, it's a longer journey for them to go onto the new bridge, because then they're almost certainly going right or down Ivy Christie. So the location doesn't really work from a kind of a pedestrian flow point of view.
And the only other thing was really about, we have a problem with traffic, and a lot of that problem is that we've got 2 major secondary schools. So, basically there will always be traffic coming into the town because of, out of necessity, getting sure not everyone comes from somewhere they can use a bus. So any implications on that as an exit or an entry to Sandwich is going to have massive impacts on the rest of Sandwich. I mean, even just Strand Street being closed, I had to get my daughter to Canterbury for a certain time, and that impacted on the bypass traffic. It doesn't take much, because we've got a limited number of roads and there's a bottleneck like river crosses for it to actually impact on the overall Sandwich traffic. That was it.
The reverse of the coin is Strand Street. It's been lovely the last.
I bet.
I'm sorry, can I say,
sorry,
the infant school is in the heart of Sandwich.
It is.
Yeah, and also secondary school now is very popular. Not the secondary, the junior school.
Yes,
There's a lot of commuters.
Yes, and Councillor Ripley.
Well, just a minor point about the crossing to make it more pedestrianised with the buttons. I mean, rather than just have it as and when somebody wants to cross the road as a pedestrian, they just press the button now. You can have it timed, can't you? And then you walk across and it's green, there's a little green man waving at you or something. And when your time is coming, then it becomes a red man. So it doesn't have to be just to have a pedestrian, a special pedestrian time for that. It doesn't have to be geared just by pedestrians. It could be part of the cycle, potentially. The other thing was, and this is probably, slightly off beam here, it's about the buses that use the bridge. If ever you're down there standing by the bridge and a bus comes round the corner, it's terrifying. They always go up on the curb, and 9 times out of 10 there's hardly anybody on the bus anyway. So, that might be something that should be looked at as well. Whether we could do anything about that, I very much doubt.
So Councillor Morehouse, then me, Councillor Marie, then Councillor Anderson.
We've had discussions with Stagecoach about using small buses in the past, and that's come to nothing. Regarding the rack run and the bypass, the town was incredibly busy with traffic in the 1970s, and then along comes the bypass, and it alleviated the problem. The issue now is that we're 45 years on from the first section of that bypass being constructed, and there are so many more cars on the road, and you're not going to encourage people to use the bypass as an alternative to going over the bridge, because between 7 and 8 in the morning, past 7 and 8 in the morning, the bypass is extremely congested. Going northwards from Bellas Bush to the A257 Ash, Canterbury, and again coming southward from Ramsgate, where the dual carriageway becomes a single carriageway, adjacent to where the filling station is.
Okay.
And the issue regarding sequencing, and we had this problem, I think, with the town team a few years ago, Carol, about 10 years ago, if I remember correctly, with complainants about pollution. And a few of us councillors went to visit one of the houses and like soot on the windowsill where the pollutants were going into the house, which is not good. At the moment, before these new traffic lights became operational, the sequencing allowed for the queues going over the bridge in the morning between 7 and half 7. The queue would be back to around about 3 Kings Yard. Now it's back to Breezy Corner. So you've already got a problem there. If you change the sequence again, you're only going to add to that problem.
Right, I've got 2 points. I hope little bits of lateral thinking. One is that the challenge, I think, as Councillor Moore has pointed out, the congestion on the bypass is pushing people to use the bridge rather than the bypass. The solution has to include the bypass, not just the bridge. So in particular the Ash Junction, because I use the bypass on Thursdays mostly, and coming back, usually rush hour, that Ash Junction, that is the bottleneck. So if that was improved in some way, so that there was those who wanted to go and carry on the bypass could, then we start to lose that massive queue which comes from beyond Discovery Park all the way to that particular roundabout. And the other one is reimposed tolls. Now we're talking about restricting or reducing use of the bridge as part of a solution to make it easier for pedestrians. If you start to force people off it, then you'll get, they won't be. I do respect the idea of having limited access for those who are immediately on the other side of the Stour by means of some sort of permit. I think you'd have a lot of people breaching that. But if you had tolls, people would actually sort of say, am I going to pay £1 or £2? And we've moved on from having a couple of chaps in their little box, and I remember it well, where you got the little ticket and you kept it for the next week so you could show it because it's the same colour. Wednesday is yellow. But an automated system, so you were charged, and if you didn't pay, then as with the crossing, the Dartford Tunnel and that kind of thing, you get a fine. But set it so that, let's say in 2 to 3 years' time, we can buy a pedestrian bridge and take the tolls away. So there's our payment, there's our way of raising money, reducing
That's the toll bridge fund.
Yes, reducing use of the toll bridge may be a part solution. Thanks. Councillor Marie?
So the damage was caused by a coach. It was a triaxle coach, which means it's got a rear steer. So when you turn the wheel, the back turns as with it. So it turns at a pivot. It's the back end that hit the wall. Most of the companies in Kent know not to take any coaches over the bridge. They can go over the bridge from the town over towards Ramsgate. They can't come over the bridge because it's too tightly turned. My suggestion would be not to pedestrianise the bridge because I think it would kill the town. It would be to stop HGVs because it's got a 7.5 tonne limit on it anyway. However, coaches and buses are exempt from that 7.5 tonne. That's why they can come in and out by the Ash Road as well via Strand Street. So my suggestion would be is to change the legislation on the bridge. So put a width restriction in for a start, put a ban on all coaches and buses. You can get signs so easily. That's just a red circle with a coach in it. Means that no buses or coaches go over it. That would be my suggestion. It would stop the swing of the buses, stop people being knocked into the river and stuff, and stop the damage to the bridge.
Yes, I mean, I think that's very interesting from Councillor Marie, but about stopping buses, so of course they would then come down Strand Street to get into central Sandwich.
If Councillor, if you remember when we've been having this long discussion over the last 4 years about the bus stop just outside here, every time we mention to Stagecoach to move it, so they hold the town to ransom.
Yes,
So they say we're going to pull the plug on all the services in Sandwich. That's the only thing that I'm worried about is if we stop the buses coming over the bridge.
Right. Yes, I mean, I think we've aired now the problems about changing the traffic light system. We're beginning now to air the problems about stopping the buses.
Yeah.
And I'm increasingly thinking that perhaps the simplest solution, certainly for mobility, pushing trolleys, pushing buggies, pushing wheelchairs and so on, would be to reconfigure the pavements. Because that wouldn't be as disruptive as the traffic light system, which would create build-ups of traffic. It would still allow for the traffic to pass across the bridge, but with less danger to all the other competing users, namely pedestrians and people using mobility aids and so on. So I can't remember, Peter, what you said that would cost.
50k.
50k. Well, I can't see why that would be out of the question. I think 50k would be feasible to raise it from different sources. And maybe Sir Roger could be persuaded that that is the simple.
I think option 3 was 100,000. Yeah.
Could we invite Sir Roger to a meeting?
Yes.
Sorry. Yes, you're right. Sorry,
So,
Can I just ask a question? How much would it cost to build the bridge on the bypass to go over the road that's already there? I'm just thinking of Chiswick roundabout.
You're talking about a flyover.
Yes. Because the one at Chiswick roundabout lasted for something like 50 years. It was only supposed to be there for 20, but they did it to take the traffic over the top of the roundabout to keep
off the top of my head, probably about 25 million pounds. But the disruption that it would cause during the construction period, which would probably be about 18 months.
The classic case of that would be the A249, where the Sheppey crossing, where the Sittingbourne turn off. You go to Detling Hill, they fly over for that.
Yeah.
That cost over £50 million to do that. And it's 3 years work.
But I've seen steel ones.
So
anyway,
can we try and take something away from this meeting, because we've talked about it? The pavement option. How would we? I think what I picked up is the pavement option, and inviting Sir Roger Gale in to have a meeting. Councillor Marie?
I do feel that regarding we had the upgrade for the bridge 3 years ago, and it's back to its disrepair like it was before it was removed and fixed. Is some of the photos Councillor Green took of the road surface coming up is now just sheet metal, especially in this type of weather we have at the moment. This is dangerous. My opinion would be is what I mentioned regarding banning HGVs and buses and long vehicles as well on that, trying to see if we can, putting that as a not hit report on the hit as an option, and also the single footpath.
So
I do feel that KCC might listen to that because it's one of the cheaper options.
Single pavement for pedestrians, restricted access to protect the bridge.
Yeah.
Anything else that, I mean, you're just focusing on what the actual solution achieves.
By restricted access, you mean restricted access?
For
HGVs,
HGVs,
coaches, yes.
Stop the,
Yeah,
but
because that's the other thing
just the
is,
stagecoach.
you know, we can't have a situation in a year's time where the bridge is uplifted for repairs for 6 months, which totally undermines all our arguments, because if we're talking about pedestrians not being able to, keeping the bridge closed for a minute, and then we're going to close the bridge for 6 months because it's broken.
But it's more likely to be broken by HGVs and buses.
That's it, yes.
I mean, when it was shut to repair the damage was last time, the town's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And that was only for what, 2-3 weeks, and it was awful.
You've got no police. The problem is you would have to narrow the bridge because you've got no policing that stops the HGV. I mean, they're not allowed over there now, the HGVs over 7.5. Yet they're still going in both directions.
Yeah, I agree.
And there's no enforcement at the moment that stops that. So the only enforcement would be if you did narrow it so that it was only mere cars, whatever, that got through.
I do feel, I mean, some of the towns that I go into in my coach, there's only certain ways in and out can go, like sandwiches for a coach to New Street, or sometimes there's the Ash Road if New Street's closed. You can get the built up concrete blocks that sit there, or the bars for only 6 restrictions, so only certain size vehicles can go through.
Councillor Chalmers?
Is there ever an option, it sounds a bit pie in the sky, but to add on something that's less robust, actually adjacent to the actual bridge, attached to the bridge?
Well, the difficulty there then is the existing piers and foundations.
The weight
pushing, yeah.
And also the way the bridge swings, because the bridge doesn't go up like a normal bridge, it swings up
That's
and around.
exactly, yeah.
So, the outcome of this particular discussion, Sir Roger Gale, an invite?
Yes,
Yes, I think that is definite. And focusing, sorry.
Is there any scope from this meeting to put some of these ideas to the local population? I know that there'll be a film and so on, but isn't it worth the local population knowing that this is the kind of thing that their council is seriously discussing?
Yes.
The
So-
agenda is public.
Yes. You're thinking of a survey of some kind?
Yeah, at some stage, I hate to raise the issue of a referendum.
Consultation,
Consultation, yes.
Yeah, consultation, that's the word.
That would we'd need to know the questions. That would be.
Which means you need to know the options.
I do feel that if you're going to do something like that, you'll need the backing from either the MP or the KCC to say that we are interested in doing this for you. But otherwise, we're just going to go in and say we want to do this, and then we KCC say no, we have money for it.
Can I just mention the highway improvement plan? There's a separate process that will be followed for that, and it's not in the long term. It's a short-term exercise that will be undertaken, and if this issue gets forced to the top through the feedback that came from residents, great, and that we discussed as part of that process. I think in parallel, engaging with Roger Gill should happen separately and should be pursued, and if it joins along the way, that's fine, but the highway improvement plan, ultimately, the options that are on there will almost certainly, in most cases, come back to the parish council to pay for. We have to bear that in mind.
Yes. Can we start off with potentially inviting Sir Roger Gale to the next Heritage Townscape meeting, where we're also going to invite other members of the council, so it's a fairly open meeting.
But Peter could present again.
Yes, well, certainly Councillor Green, you can present.
Might I suggest it would be much better to have the meeting on the site, so people actually see the issue. Having it in here, with all due respect, is not going to show the opportunities and the difficulties. If you're going to invite a number of people, I suggest do it at the site, and then by all means come back here. But there is nothing to beat the site meeting
I
to
think
see.
that's a very good. And Councillor Morehouse.
If it is a site meeting, then we need to arrange it at the worst possible time so that they can see it at its
6 o'clock.
its worst.
Well, we meet at 6:30. So if we meet there at 6, that is a bad time to meet. Bad time. And then we come here for 6:30 and continue for the next meeting.
Yeah.
And with an invite to Sir Roger Gale.
But I would suggest from the outset is that just Mr. Rochester, is you do want to get as much support as you can from KCC. So whether it's their road manager or their whatever the designation is, I do think
The
highways, or at least the cabinet member for highways.
Well, if Sir Roger is coming and we put the invite to highways, they are most likely going to come just to sort of keep us under control. So it actually,
That's an impossible task, isn't it?
No, sorry, Councillor, can I just ask one question? Did this come up at the survey that you were doing on, the other day when you were doing a survey about traffic and parking, speeding?
The HIP survey.
Yeah, but did anyone come up with a problem on the
Not
bridge?
with me, I mean,
No,
I did
no.
a good percentage, but some.
I did, I
Did you?
received
Yeah.
comments on
Did
it.
you? Okay. I just wondered, we were talking about
We
it.
don't know yet,
Right.
the
can I
outcomes.
have one more from Councillor Morehouse, then we'll move on to the next subject.
Neil Baker is Councillor Neil Baker is a portfolio of the whole.
Okay,
Yes,
yes.
so we'll go as well. So we'll see. Thank you very much.
Can I just
Yes.
clarify?
Yeah.
So we are inviting Sir Gale to the next meeting,
Yes.
and you will be holding a pre-meeting at the bridge for a site meet.
With the intention of meeting at 6 o'clock.
Okay, and then you will be coming back here and we will be updating on that site
Yes.
meeting so that the public are aware.
So that the public are aware, yes. I don't know whether we can have some remote viewing. I'm sure we can do that, yeah. So that the public can watch. Right, if we can move on.
Sorry, the
Yes.
alternative would be to take a video.
Yeah. But we possibly
Then
the
you've
mobile
got a
phone.
yes, you've got a permanent record that can be
Yes.
shared with others.
I mean, because it's still going to be quite dusky and dark that time in March.
Yes.
2 months. Oh,
No, sunset will have
it's moved on to 7 o'clock. So I think it'll be long enough. Right.
Perhaps we do both. Have video recordings of busy periods and whatever.
I can set up a camera on my corner of my house that faces just on that corner, so you're more than welcome to use my window.
So we've moved on from there. Terms of reference. Councillor Black, would you like to introduce? I'll just introduce you with regard to terms of reference. Councillor Black has proposed modifications to the terms of reference with regard to Heritage Townscape and sorry, Peter, thank you very much for
No problem.
that was really appreciated. And so I hope you had a chance to have a look through. Basically, he's highlighted in red the modifications to our terms of reference, in particular where it fits with the disability access strategy and the like.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, when we looked at the top of the terms of reference last time, I was horrified to see that the reference to tourism was to manage the public conveniences leased by the council, to have oversight of the visitor information centre for the benefit of resident visitors. That is completely inappropriate. So I've suggested a few changes here. Really, there's only 3 changes I'm suggesting. If we look under duties, responsibilities and power, the 3rd paragraph says improve the town's built and green environment, help them to make the town safe, vibrant. I do think we need to start doing things about making it vibrant. Otherwise, you know, this is dying the death of 1,000 cuts. The second thing was towards the bottom of the page, to manage the public convenience, at least by the council. Leave that, we have to do that. But take the rest of the sentences out and replace it beneath with the paragraph I've suggested there, which is the sort of thing that the Tourism Forum is doing now actively, but it also links into Tourist Information Centre and the things that we want to do with events and some of the other things that we've discussed at the Town Council, and in particular in areas like committees like this. So that's what I proposed. And finally, I think we need to up our game. It's just doing it as district and county is not sufficient. We have to look nationally, because we know from the Tourism Forum that Sandwich is barely known to the national agencies. Which may surprise you, but nobody knows about it. So we really have to put nationally in there. Those are the simple modifications.
Councillor Chicker?
Just an observation on managing the public conveniences. I was just going to question when we come to review terms of reference for the next year. We might want to consider that moving across to F&GP. I'm sure there was a good reason for its inclusion at a point in the past. But now these, you know, the opening and closing, the argument for having them is well established. So there is really a maintenance issue around the toilets, and I think we've got an agenda item on this shortly. But in terms of, I suppose, the big chunk you've put in there is quite substantially demanding, and the question is whether, if it's discharged through a tourism forum, does it meet this terms of reference requirement? Because if it doesn't, and all of this falls on this committee, I think it's a significant stretch of activity that we aren't currently doing. So it's just understanding its inclusion and what the consequence of doing it. The worst thing to do is to put something in that's really bold and really important, and then it just never gets dealt with.
Well, to answer that, the Tourism Forum, as the two members here, and I'm sure Mrs. George can confirm that we are making that much more proactive than it has been for a number of years. It is not the only thing, because of course that's only a voluntary group, but we are working with the businesses as much as we're working with other people, and we are working very closely with Dover and White Cliffs to promote and publicise Sandwich and surrounding tourism attractions. So we're pushing against an open door with Dover District and White Cliffs. However, there are a lot of things that need to happen here. There's the whole issue about what we mean by tourism information. That's gone round and round the houses, and we've really not addressed that. And we should be looking at this as we've got these various events, we're seeking to ramp up the number of events, but is it giving us a bang for our buck? And I think that is something that the Town Council should be looking at. So there's elements of it which the Tourism Forum and businesses are doing, but there are elements, and there's possibly a few elements, that Sandwich Town Council needs to do. But we're not doing anything at the moment, everything's falling between the cracks.
Can I just come back on
Yes.
this? So just to play that back to you, because my question was more about, by signing up to this inclusion, you can pull out straight away things that have to be done to satisfy meeting this terms of reference inclusion. So, for example, this committee, by including this, becomes a major source for promoting and publicising Sandwich and surrounding tourism attractions. That's a statement. We'd be accepting that that is our responsibility. We'd also be saying that we as a committee are going to provide regular reports to the council, residents and business on the outcomes and initiatives. And I'm not arguing against any of this. I'm just saying the consequences of this have to be clearly understood by this committee to integrate it into the terms of reference. Events and programmes, and to discuss local support. So there's quite a chunk of activity that, if we accept this into here, will require effort.
Councillor Anderson?
Yes, I mean, to follow up from that, I'm a bit surprised that the words tourism forum are not referred to at all. So because I'm not sure what the terms of reference for the tourism forum are, but presumably they cover a number of these activities. So why can't we have something like, work with the tourism forum?
Discharged through the protected forum.
Yeah, something like that. So, to indicate that there is a relationship between the tourism forum and this committee. Because as I understand it, the tourism forum, it reports to the town council, does it, or to this committee?
The tourism forum, the only formal links we have is that they allow us to use the facility. We get absolutely nothing from the town council or the tourism forum apart from the use of the office. It doesn't exist. We've been pushing it forward ourselves, and there's a couple of councillors on it. Many don't attend. That's a bit of a sad statement, but it is businesses and one or two enthusiasts that are driving this forward. But we get zero support from the council.
Right.
So I'm not going to put it. I'm not going to commit a voluntary body which we've set up with our own initiative to somehow doing the work the council should be doing, and it's specifically in other parts of the council that we want to promote tourism. Well, fine, but you've got to put some effort into it. But that's the whole point. If you want tourism, don't moan about it or do something about it, and it's as simple as that. Tourism Forum is doing an awful lot, but it's off its own bat.
It's because presumably the tourism forum has no status within the council.
No.
Is that right? It has none.
Absolutely none.
Right.
And that's very convenient because it means we can do things as a working body without having to go through the red tape that councils have to work through.
That's right, and we can invite all sorts of different people to come along.
Yeah, and we can go to places without any permission from any councillor.
Yes.
So I'll ask Mrs. George,
It's a very strange situation, I agree, when we feel as though we are supporting the town.
Yeah.
I think we do think we're supported vaguely by the town council because they endorse, if you like, and we do come back to them like I did with the elephant. So I think there's that, but I do get entirely what you're saying, that actually this is a little group that really doesn't have an awful lot of power, and it's not endorsed officially, if you like, by the town council. And I think that residents will be looking at the town council more and more to see what they are doing. I mean, the Compass Group lead the issues around businesses, and they do it all on their own, don't they? But it perhaps does need some formality to make sure that we get that sort of support and are able to move it forward. Because if you want anything and it costs money, it's a bit like the town team. You have to keep coming back to the town council. The only thing with the town team is that it does have officially two Sandwich Town councillors who sit on that, and they're designated by the town council. So
we don't have anything like
no, and we don't at the fore. It's just we get people who turn up because they're interested. But other than that, no.
Yeah, I mean, I always go to the tourist forum. I've been to
Yes.
for quite a long time, and I actually think that there is a benefit in being separate from the council, because it gives you more freedom to do other things, and you don't have to go through all the rigmarole and meetings and etc. that you do with council things. So I think that is, I understand what you're saying, and I think it's a bit of a dichotomy, isn't it? Which is the best thing to do, but I don't think the Tourist Forum should give up its freedom, because we're going to lose a lot if we do.
Could you give the Tourism Forum item on the agenda every Heritage and Townscape where a representative, as you already attend, can update.
Well, I'm the acting secretary for my sins. We can do that. I think we can. We can do
That would
something.
be useful, and then that keeps everyone in the loop.
Yeah, we can do something like that, Joey. That shouldn't be a problem until you get a new secretary. Which might be coming faster than you think.
Right, so with regard to the terms of reference, now, do you want to modify it before we vote on it, or are we happy to vote on this as going ahead, possibly with, as I think the comment has been, a reference to the Tourism Forum as having a part to play with this particular paragraph?
Well, if you have any reference, it is merely that there is a tourism forum. I don't think, as Councillor Ripley said, and Mr. George said, there are a lot of advantages in us not being a council.
It says voluntary groups, which of course would include that. So, are we happy
Just
to
make one very pedantic point? It's not, we shouldn't have an apostrophe. There's no apostrophe on it's when it's used in the possessive sense.
it's
When you put the apostrophe in, it's surrounding attraction, tourism attractions, it should be an apostrophe. I went to girls.
Councillor Choker?
Yeah, so whilst I've only got my votes to cast, I would find it difficult to drop this in terms of reference, because I don't think we'll do it. I don't think we'll pay it the service that it's demanding by just saying terms of reference agreed. So I think we as a committee have to understand what it is we're going to do in the future around tourism to pay the right attention to this inclusion. So I think what will happen is it will just
be words.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of commitment here.
I know
And I'm not saying that's wrong at all.
And we're not, this council is doing not a lot.
Yes, we have to unpick it.
Unless you have a ginger group, like the Tourism Forum, it will continue to do nothing. So the choice is yours, folks. Up to you.
But the Tourism Forum will be reporting to the council.
It doesn't report, sorry, we don't report. No. We would, we are not a council committee. We are not run by the council, and we will do whatever we choose to do. We've been suggested that it might be useful to have a regular dialogue, and someone can sort of say, this is what we're doing. But I do not want, and I would suspect most members of the committee, therefore, are not interested in reporting, because it just was a dead-handed bureaucracy on it. And what is happening with tourism in this town? Not a lot, apart from what the Tourism Forum and one or two organisations like Compass are doing.
Yes.
We need to do a lot more. We're trying to do a lot more.
But I'm just trying to think, supposing you want, I'm just pulling something out of the air. Supposing the Tourism Forum thought it would be a good idea to have, which has been discussed in the past, big electronic notice boards, say, at the railway station and on the quay. They cost money. So how do we equip the Tourism Forum to come to the council and say, here is a proposal? I mean, that's because at some point you will need money to do tourist-related things.
A lot of this comes through Dover, not through Sandwich.
No, that's right.
And we have been busy developing this. In fact, we get more attendance from Dover than we do from Sandwich, quite frankly.
I'm just wondering, would a way forward be to bring this back, not to push it on, but to bring it back next time, so then there can be a more detailed discussion about what this committee would like to do in terms of tourism, and then you can come up as a group for an amended statement, as opposed to agreeing necessarily to this one today.
Well, I think then...
Sorry, can I suggest very, very similar, but include it and have it as something we grow into? accepting that this is not going to be something that the next meeting, all of a sudden that we are complying with this, and possibly the meeting after that, but after a year or two, this is something, it gives us a target, because otherwise there's nowhere else in the council that we actually have this as a focus, as something that we should be, considering and looking at. Got to start somewhere.
We're working towards.
Yes.
To work towards, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah. And then review it, not next meeting, but meeting after.
But if people want more, then I'm not going to suggest more things. This committee has to start suggesting more things.
I'm not sure if making this particular section and this a target. I think targets need to come after. This is a very set document about what this committee does and doesn't do. So I wonder if it would be better to bring it back if there isn't consensus that this is what you want, to discuss it and think about what we do want to do in terms of tourism.
I would say I want to do this, but not necessarily by next meeting. It's something that we can have as something we aim to do. Otherwise, there's nowhere that you have an aim for the Heritage Townscape to move towards.
Could this be an action then? So for the next agenda item, to create a tourism action plan.
Well, who's going to do it? I'm sorry, but who's going to do it? This is the problem. This has gone. I've been in the council for 2 years. We've talked and talked and talked and done not a lot. So I'm sorry, folks. And this is precisely what we're saying about the dead hand of bureaucracy. If you don't want it, don't include it. But this is something that we in the tourism forum are getting pretty fed up with. This council does not a lot, to put it mildly.
Can I just ask something? When the tourism forum was created, was the terms of reference created for the tourism forum?
There were some very vague answers, deliberately vague, because we don't want to be a bureaucracy, and we're not part of the town council. And this is not just tourism forum. This is about what this committee should be striving for, and I'd be quite happy to have something about working towards.
To what you say, if the word to work with businesses and voluntary groups towards actively promoting, that's basically two words of change.
I could as a councillor, whether the forum is happy with that, but I think they are disappointed.
Yeah.
So can we not take it to a position where we have an agenda item in the next meeting where the tourism forum is represented, be it by ourselves or others, and we have a sensible discussion about what is lacking in the right place for tourism is this committee.
Yeah.
That is undoubted. So there's no issue about trying to shift it elsewhere. But it's how we have a relationship of what information flows from the forum into the council. Because in some ways, you would think some of this or most of this is already happening in the forum. It's it's part of your reason for existing. So you wouldn't necessarily want to have a parallel in ignorance activity. So I think we need to make connections with the forum and then decide how this committee can add to, supplement, add value within the town council to support tourism.
So, Councillor Leckley?
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of this. I just think we need to ensure the independence of the tourism forum, because that's really important that the tourist forum has the right to do whatever it sees fit in terms of tourism.
So, can I propose that we leave this until next meeting and discuss it further? Would you be happy with that, or would you like a vote on this now?
I prefer an action at the next meeting where actually we have a proper conversation with the tourism forum represented on how we can help, support, work alongside and do what we do in this committee.
Well, I need to take it back to the forum, and
Does this come from Forum, or is this your words?
so these are the words that I've done, but then I'm wearing two hats in
Yeah, of
this.
course you are.
Sorry, can I just ask, when is the next tourism forum
That's a good
meeting?
question.
12th of February.
And we could ask what they would like to see the kids.
Yeah, I think that's one way we could do it.
Yeah.
When is the next H&T?
In March.
In March. Well, I'll ask them, between us we can, well, in fact there's three of us on that, we can ask what they want. I have to say I'm disappointed, and I think this is a classic of why things ain't happening.
So I will have an action then to place this on the agenda for the next meeting,
Yep.
and I will be in contact with the tourism forum to.
Can I
Yes.
expand on that so that you have an opportunity to modify should you wish, but we will vote on this.
You should still vote on this today because it's been presented.
Yeah, if that's the case. I'm happy to vote on this, but I would recommend, can I put a modification, what's the correct word? To work the business
Amendment.
amendment towards actively promoting. So that change that towards actively.
So to actively,
To work with businesses and voluntary groups towards actively promoting.
okay. Is that an amendment?
An amendment I'm proposing.
I would accept that. Yeah, I'd second that.
So can we have a vote on, that would include this, with those two words changed. Do you want to say them again? Are we happy with, you understand what? So, okay, let's vote on this. We've had a proposer and a seconder to include this form of words with those two words changed. Voting to approve. Right, so, yeah, I think that's passed.
And the comma, and the apostrophe.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And that we are coming back on that, so that's going to be an agenda item for next meeting.
Correct.
The date of the next meeting, the 11th, is actually Tuesday.
Is that right or wrong?
Yeah, it's
Well,
Tuesday.
sorry. Which meeting are we talking about?
The next Heritage Townscape.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's actually 11th of March, is a Tuesday.
You must have been on 12, sorry, apologies.
So we'll change that to the 12th. I would have ended up standing.
12th of March.
Yeah. Financing.
I've got finance committees. I'll be on the 19th
What is it?
to be on the council side.
Who did it?
Without my giving, this is, yes, can I please email and confirm?
Yes. Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Finance and
We've got 2 months to get it right.
But I've got Heritage and Townscape for the 19th.
19th, exactly.
Okay. Good, shall we make a few? Okay. Option number 9, V-Day 80. Beacons and lamplights of peace. Update and discussion of events to mark V-Day 80. We discussed this at the town meeting 2 days ago with an agreement on a budget of £3,000, so we have moved forward there. That looking at the potential for a keepsake for a cohort of Sandwich kids. I'm not quite sure how to identify them yet, but at least we know that we can do that. I will approach with regard to the searchlight, bearing in mind we mustn't have anti-aircraft guns as well, in case we shoot anything down. This was
I do recall, but you can actually get them with firing in propane, so they sound like proper.
oh yes, we have that at Sandwich, so it's great. Yes, great. But,
I'm more concerned about aircraft coming out of the sky.
No, it doesn't quite work like that. It's the laser beams they worry about when you start pointing at pipes.
Because they can blind.
Yeah, but this.
On the cohort, the school children, do speak to the town clerk. We did an exercise last year in terms of we got the health the packages that we got a grant for, and we went through a process of identifying.
Brilliant. Yes.
So the information maybe
yes.
Contact points will be available.
Yeah. Lamp lights of peace. Where does that?
I think that was part of the suggestion from about what could be done. I think that's something that's happening nationally.
Right. But generally speaking, if anybody has particular views as to what should be included, Councillor Anderson and myself are looking at including the Leave to Land exhibition again in Guildhall, so that will definitely go ahead.
Also, I would like to give a talk if that.
And a talk by Councillor Anderson, either as an STC, well, the jury room, but I would suggest the jury room would be the ideal place, but we'll work towards that, which is possibly with the Leave to Land exhibition there as well.
Well, in the jury
on the walls, so we can actually move it up there. Shouldn't take long. But we can work
I
it out.
didn't actually, there were two Claires involved, myself and Claire Weissenberg, in putting that exhibition together.
Yes.
But it's really Claire Weissenberg's exhibition. So, and my talk does not refer to the exhibition.
Right, because I know yours is the 4,000.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Councillor, has anyone actually asked community how they like to see this celebrated? You go back to the tourism forum, and I wonder if DDC will be the people that step up and sort of keep things going or get the publicity out there. It's quite a big occasion.
It is. From my point of view, we had the D-Day celebration where we had a great deal of information passed down from central government, which we essentially complied with. The challenge then is telling people and inviting people to take part.
Yeah.
And having things that they can relate to. And I think that's where we're looking at the moment. And what we do have is the previous weekend, we have Sandwich Salutes, which has quite a lot of publicity associated with it, and that can be used to tell people, come back on the 8th, because there's even more happening. So yes, I do agree that sort of engage with the community, but works the other way as well. The community can engage with us, but they'll be able to engage the weekend beforehand, coming through on the 8th. That seems to have been the biggest problem, is telling people what's happening. It's just gone. Right. Public conveniences refurbishment. Discussion on updating the public conveniences in Sandwich.
So this was on the agenda as a request from the last meeting. Did you want to?
Yes, so what prompted it was that late summer, for my sins, I took a tour of the toilets. Good daylight. And it wasn't a pleasant experience. And I'm talking about the toilets here, not down at the quay. So I've done had a few conversations with a few people myself, but in parallel the town clerk has as well. So the bottom line is the toilets here need to be refurbished, and that can start from a point of somebody getting out a pot of paint and painting them as a minimum, but then there may be an opportunity to do more. So I don't know if I want to pass over to you now.
So the town clerk has been having conversations with DDC about this, as well as the property manager, and he has provided me with a report which I'll read out. So it says says, I wanted to provide you with an update on the potential refurbishment of the cattle market public conveniences. Without wishing to state the obvious, the toilets are in poor condition and desperately need refurbishing. The state of the toilets has led to numerous complaints from the public. This could be the first building that is visited by shoppers or tourists as they arrive in the cattle market car park and is not a great advert. In addition to this requirement for internal improvements, there are changes needed to the external finishes that would greatly enhance the appearance. The town clerk and I recently had a meeting with Dover District Council over another matter, and the town clerk took the opportunity to mention the poor state of the cattle market toilets. This has led to further discussions, and I can advise there is a possibility of DDC obtaining further funding for this refurbishment project. Although it would be a DDC project, I understand that I would have some, or the town council would have some involvement, and particularly interested in the external finishing of the building. Further updates will be provided at the next stage of discussions.
Right.
So it's moving on.
Yeah, brilliant.
This actually was something that came up with the tourism forum, believe it or not. So, it is definitely an issue that they are pretty poor. The ones down at the quay, that's a different matter, I agree, but they are pretty poor, and if anything can be done to really improve them, that would be really wonderful. Because, as you say, it's right beside the main car park, and it's the town centre where people are going to come to use the bars and the shopping opportunities.
I just get all nostalgic going in there. It takes me back to my teens.
Does it?
I haven't changed. No, not a bit.
Have you still got your slender on the floor?
Yes.
You are tourism forum.
You are now entering the asylum. That's on the way out. Right, we can move on at our convenience. At your items for information only, matters for the March 2025 meeting. Opportunities for members to request matters for future Heritage Townscape Committee meetings and share information. Is there anything that we should have discussed at this one that we can discuss at the next one? Obviously, we don't do any other business. Councillor Anderson.
Well, I think, we look at the action log at every meeting every 2 months, and certain things don't move on very fast. And when I was chair, tried to pivot this committee towards looking at green issues and accessibility issues. And so I would like us to put a high priority on the tree planting programme which the volunteer tree warden has developed. We did do something, which was we supported both financially and morally and with some labour the double hedge planting in Cowleys Meadow. And I know that Nicky Warden has other ideas, so I would like that to move to the top, that sort of issue to move to the top of the agenda, and similarly making this a much more cycle-friendly town if we can. Pedestrians, yes, please, but we all know that that's problematic. And there was one other issue, but we have looked at them today, but nothing much happens, and I would like them to become much higher priorities.
So you wish for me to place the tree planting scheme on the agenda for next?
Yes, I mean, you need to consult with Vicky. I think Vicky, you've been,
And the cycle issue is a project, and it has been a project for a while, so it'd be good to get.
Nothing's happened.
Yeah, we've had reasons given, haven't we?
Yes.
But now is an opportunity, hopefully.
Yes, that's right.
Councillor Knight,
Yes.
I'm hoping that the problem will be solved by the next meeting, but do we know what's being done about the family of rats that are on the road?
Yeah. There's been a number of complaints already to DDC, and their property services team are already investigating it. So the answer is hopefully it'll be resolved. I mean, one resolution might be that just left alone. I don't know what the outcome will be, but the town clerk is engaged with DDC on this.
So we spoke to the lady from Parks and Open Spaces on Friday,
Yeah.
and she said, well, of course they have to bring in all of the various people, you know, to make sure that they're being treated humanely, or whether they really are rats or water voles.
Are they not water voles?
No, they're not. They've established that they're not water voles, they are rats.
Whereabouts are they?
Right, there's a whole family.
We'll end the meeting now, but you can carry on talking about
Right,
rats.
I just thought it was still,
The
if
meeting is over.
multiplying a bit
Yes.
by then.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Yes.
next week.
Yes.